All right, here we go. Welcome back, everybody. This is Nano Prep Workshop, and this is part of our novel boot camp, which is our program which takes about 90 days. It takes you all the way from idea to finished draft of a new book. We've finished 3 of these complete novel boot camps now, and often we like for these to sort of coincide with November because this is National Novel Writing Month, or NaNoWriMo as it's called. So during this time, it's a good, the month of October is a good time to get all your sort of ducks in a row, get organized, make sure that your outline is in good working shape. The brightness is a bit much. There we go. And ultimately just make sure that you are ready for starting pages in November. It's okay if you're not following that exact template or the exact dates of NaNoWriMo, but in any case, this is just a good time to prep your new book. So we are in a stage channel, which means you will have to click that request to speak button if you want to be heard speaking aloud. It looks like a hand in the bubble at the bottom of your screen. And then from there, you do have to be invited to the stage, so you'll have to accept that invite once that happens. We are WordCamp, which is part of the Skill Camp family of servers. That includes things like Script Camp, which is a place where you can find lots of free classes, table reads, script swaps, writers groups, and classes for our supporting members, including these boot camps and labs. Labs are every Friday and Saturday, where you can bring pages, questions, topics, and anything you're working on and wondering about. We have lots of other servers here, which you can see as well, including our most recent one, Game Camp, which now has game design workshops Wednesdays at 6 p.m. And we're always adding new events on these different classes, which you can find out info about on our main server, Script Camp, or on our website, which is scriptcamp.net. So, NaNoWriMo. Lots of people do this all around the world. They try to write a draft of a complete book, 50 to 100,000 words in November. That's about the length of a publishable novel these days. And for a debut, you typically want to stick under 120 or so. We're going to be starting the official new boot camp, the WordCamp, what do we call it? The WordCamp Novel Boot Camp on November 1st. So that's actually going to persist past November, but at least you'll put that first huge leg of the work in November. Today's class is free, and all of our Nano Prep workshops are also going to be free for everyone to participate. And this is just a pretty open time where you can ask questions about your book, try to make sure that your plot is working, and get those big story hurdles out of the way to make sure that you have as clear of a roadmap as possible moving forward into writing. It's a lot of work to write a full book. It takes a lot of energy and commitment and persistence and time and energy. And so it's best, I think, at least if you're trying to figure out what the method is that you use, I would try out this really organized method first. There are always people that sort of are able to find their way through the story and what we call pantsing through the story and things like this. You can try that if it works for you, but what I find most often is that if you're just getting started, it's helpful to have some kind of plan and to go into this with as much organization as you can, with the ideal being that you have an outline at the beginning that tells you what happens in every chapter. You don't have to stick exactly to that. You don't have to always follow any kind of template, but having that will just help keep you on track and keep you productive all the way until the end. Otherwise, it's very difficult to stay invested in finishing a book and to also keep track of where you are in the story, what needs to happen next, and all those things. It's best to kind of separate that process of figuring out what needs to happen from actually executing it on the page. So here's just a list of everything we have coming up. We also have a new short film boot camp coming up in November. That's going to be Fridays, 11 a.m. on Film Camp. New Code Camp classes as well, starting November 1st, Fridays at 8. And we have TV boot camp that's still going. Just recently started Sundays at 11 a.m., and that is going to be happening tomorrow. So bring your projects, bring your TV ideas, pilot concepts. I think we're focusing on sci-fi for this upcoming genre spotlight. We have Feature Bootcamp as well that runs Fridays 6 to 8 p.m. currently. We're halfway through that current one, so I would recommend you can still come and check them out if you want. If you remember, you can access any class or workshop going on. But if you want to actually write a complete movie, just wait 4 weeks, and then we'll be starting a new Feature Bootcamp. Once the bootcamp is done, we always cycle it back down. We cycle it back to week 0 for the next one. So you can imagine that after the Friday Feature Bootcamp concludes, it will move to Sunday, but it will restart. So we have the Friday and Sunday slots that alternate, feature and TV. We also have these labs that I mentioned. That's going to be Fridays 12 to 2 and Saturdays 4 to 6, where you can bring your questions, topics, and up to 5 pages of whatever you're working on. You can join this at scriptcamp.net, where you can sign up for unlimited membership if you've not already done that. If you would like to just get a single class, you can do that at scriptcamp.net/classes, but we recommend unlimited membership because it gets you access to everything we do, every event, class, and workshop on the server. Okay, so we have a bunch of potential slides. We don't actually have to look at any of them specifically today. I thought it could be fun to do some more picture prompts if it turns out that no one has too much to work on, but I would encourage you to actually do that legwork as much of it as you can today, that just getting those questions solved and those story problems fixed and trying to discover the ultimate shape of your story. If you have questions about what that looks like, or you're still trying to break the structure, then this is a work-focused kind of class period. We don't have to only do lecture slides. We can do direct work, work one-on-one if needed to figure out what needs to happen with your book outline. So we will have an overview, but I think ultimately I will ask maybe just for folks to give updates. If you want to raise a hand, tell us where you are in your book project, what stage you're at, what help you need, and just what would give you that boost towards reaching that next step. If we look at the basic progression of steps as being concept, logline, sketchbook, story beats, scene cards, ideally you can be always just looking ahead to that next thing and asking what direct steps do I need to reach that next rung on the ladder. Okay, so I think that we will start with just, that update session, what do we call it? Update segment, where you can tell us about yourself and maybe what book you're working on, what you're hoping to write, if you have any favorite books, authors, or genres, or if you haven't spoken up before at one of our events, you can introduce yourself. But if we already know you, you don't have to. You can just tell us what you're working on now, what you're looking to work on, what new genres are interesting to you, or anything else. All right, the floor is open. You can feel free to raise a hand and give us an update. Tell us about your progress. Luke, go ahead.
I haven't made much progress. I'm still doing pre-writing on my Victorian horror. I don't even know how you describe it. Weird West. It's a little bit of everything. It's high fantasy, but it's still in pre-writing phase. Mostly working on Santicide currently. And as far as favorite books, authors, and genres, I have way too many of those. Douglas Adams probably wrote my favorite books. Genres would be sci-fi. Authors, I guess Ray Bradbury, Isaac Asimov. I like, even though I like the content of his books, even though they're a little dry. Michael Crichton, I've read a bunch of his books. And one of the authors that got me into reading in the first place when I was a wee tot was Peter Benchley, the author of Jaws. He writes sort of like nautical horror. And some of it gets into the sci-fi realm, but mostly it's just grounded in Earth reality. But yeah, I have a lot more too. Just those are the ones that come to mind right now.
Okay, thank you for that. And Luke also does Sci-Fi Workshop, which is Thursdays, 6 p.m.
Yep. Every
and
Thursday.
Speaking of sci-fi, also, TV Workshop coming up is going to be, or our TV Bootcamp coming up will be sci-fi themed Sundays, 11 to 1. Thanks,
Yeah,
Luke.
I'm excited.
Yes.
You're welcome.
Okay, so if Luke is still in the pre-writing phase, that's the basic kind of like outlining stage that I expect most people are probably on some version of that, some percent of the way through pre-writing, which means everything from logline to scene cards. So you can, if you want to tell us specifically where you're at or what would give you the boost towards that next step, you can absolutely do that as well. Let's hear from Rourke.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Hi, go ahead.
Great. Hi. Okay, so hey, my name is Ryan. I am in the pre-writing phase of a fantasy story that's kind of been floating around in my head for a while. I'm just trying to get. I've had like the act like 1 and 2 for a while, or like one out of like in like a four act structure. I've kind of had those two for a while, and I'm finally getting some ideas for the 3rd and 4th acts now. So that's kind of where I'm at in the planning phase. So it's a let's see. So yeah, it's a high fantasy alternate world fiction and it follows a girl who's she's a pilgrim guide, so she guides people to like holy sites in this like sort of sun god worshipping religion, and she comes across an envoy from the sort of southern like capital, I guess, of the empire, and she has to go and attend this conclave, and I'm still working on the log line, as you could probably tell, but it's sort of a political intrigue of trying to navigate this new world and stuff like that she's going into.
Okay, great. And what % of the way would you say you were through your outlining?
Probably, like, I have written down about 75% of it, but I'm still revising it as I'm going.
Okay, great. Well, you can feel free to share more today if maybe you want to work on the logline or something
totally.
like that, which would be helpful.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you for sharing. Okay. Anybody else want to give an update on where you're at? What's your progress? What are you working on? Nacho, go ahead. Are you there, Nacho? You're on mute.
Oh, sorry. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I wrote a first draft of a novel during a previous NaNoWriMo. And recently I started writing a short story that seems like it's probably going to be a novel, or at least a novella. And I think that's the one I'm going to do. I'm going to try to write it next month. And I got a lot of help from that. I wrote out a kind of a sort of just a summary of like a few paragraphs. And Conor helped me a lot with that last week. So I'm outlining it now. I'm probably about halfway through outlining. Just like kind of, fleshing out a bit more from that brief summary. And yeah, I think in terms of genres, I really enjoy like all kinds of genres. I guess, these first two, the one that I'm working on now is, I guess I would call it historical horror, dark fantasy maybe, cosmic horror, I don't know. But yeah, my goal as a writer is really just, write for practice and to get better at the technique right now. Don't really have big hopes for this project.
Okay, great. And do you think that you have any like sort of hurdles or questions you're trying to resolve in your outlining now, or is it just that you have to spend more time at it?
Yeah, right now I think there's a lot that will really sort of helped me figure out some stuff during our previous session. Mm-hmm. And so now it's just sort of like fleshing things out. So just, taking time to kind of like fill it out a bit more. But I think it's off to a good start.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. Anyone else want to tell us where you're at with your novel writing? Michelle says, I'm still working on my sci-fi novel. I'm in the second act. I love sci-fi. Okay, great. So you're outlining the second act, or you're writing pages for the second act? I guess you had already started it, so maybe you mean you're sort of like right in the middle of the book. Re-outlining. Okay, got it. Cool. Sounds good. Thanks for that. Megan says just under halfway done. Awesome. Seems like you're making good progress. I guess we'll just hear from Vicky once she finishes typing. Or you can speak up and raise your hand if you want. And that will be... Did I miss anyone? Nope, I guess that's everyone. Okay, great. Vicky says, just starting the outline. Okay, cool. So you're at the very top of the process. No problem. We'd be glad to look at a logline, though, if you have one. And as for me myself, I am waiting to see what happens. I'm finishing a rewrite of a screenplay for a director. But when that's done, I think I will be writing a new book. I'm trying to decide between a young adult sci-fi called Emissaries and a young adult fantasy, which is called Curse Boy. Still not sure which one I'm going to go with.
I like Curse Boy.
Thanks. I think Curse Boy is the first of a series.
I mean, it sounds really fun when you sort of explained it to us.
Awesome. Thanks, Nacho. So we're at the Nano Prep roadmap right now. So looking at this, we kind of can break this into several weeks where we start with premise, character, and logline, plotting and story beats, synopsis and query letter, and then chapter outline. And you can look at the synopsis or query letter as kind of an optional step. Not everybody works very well with that, but it can be nice to have that at the very beginning of the process rather than at the end, just because it allows you to see a more sort of zoomed out picture of the story and make sure that it's all working before you commit to writing the whole thing, but it may not work for you. So in any case, at least I would go through premise, character, logline, story beats, and then chapter outline, which we also call scene cards. And so we have checked in with everybody, so I don't think we need to necessarily go through all these slides. I will, to begin with, just invite a few folks that it seemed like they could maybe use a little boost figuring something out or getting over a hurdle, if they would like to do that now. So Ryan, for instance, if you'd like to share your outline and we can help you figure out a logline, or you could just talk through it, or whatever would be most helpful for you. Would you like to do that now?
Sure thing, yeah.
Great.
Okay, so what do you think the best place to start would be? Characters or like world building, or like just, it's kind of hard because the premise is wrapped up in a lot of world building stuff, so.
I see. Okay, so it's you're writing an epic fantasy with a lot of POVs?
What do you say? With a lot of what?
Are there a lot of point of view characters?
No, I'm trying to cut down on that, especially because it's my first, this is my first foray into novel writing. So I've done some creative writing in the past, but nothing long. So I'm trying to not fall into that trap.
Okay,
I've got two right now.
Okay, well, you have 2 point of view characters. Okay, so
Two, but not a huge amount.
that's all right. So would you consider them to be sort of equally important, or is one of them the protagonist, would you say?
No, one of them is definitely the protagonist.
Okay. So
Yeah, it's like a
in
protagonist.
presenting a
of,
logline, usually the best
deuteragonist?
way is to... Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, you're good. You're good.
So in writing a logline, we are going to start with the protagonist, and you're going to frame the entire thing around them. Even though there are other characters in your world and story, we're just trying to write a single sentence that expresses the very basics of who the character is, what they're trying to do, and what's standing in the way, what's difficult or interesting about it, and all those things together kind of sum up to express the hook of the story. So it's telling us kind of the world that it takes place in, what journey we'll be investing in, and what the character is going up against in terms of the scope and scale. So maybe you can you don't have to frame it in one neat sentence right away, but can you just tell us who your main character is and what she's trying to do?
Sure. Yeah. I have while they were talking, I've sort of opened up my dump file, and I think I've found kind of a log line. So let me see if this will work. So I'll go ahead and I'll post it in the chat as well.
Okay.
So after Pilgrim Guide Amira rescues an envoy from a sabotaged ship, she must journey south into a mire of political intrigue to stop a conclave that would destroy her monastic life and reawaken an ancient threat.
All right. I think I'm going to paste that onto a Drive document just so I can move some things around.
Yeah. I think whenever I was writing it initially, I didn't know how specific to be, because it feels a little bit generic on some parts, or a little bit not. I don't know what the line is.
All good. Yeah. Let's take a look. Check. Okay. So to begin with, can I ask this question? So how old is your main character?
She's going to be in her early 20s.
Early 20s. Okay, so this is an adult book. This is not a YA?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah, not a YA.
Okay, after Pilgrim Guide, Amira rescues an envoy from a sabotaged ship. So if I think of the term envoy, is that like a delegation of people? Or what exactly is an envoy in this case?
Like an individual, emissary. There's been a council called that his job was to go to like different nations and like inform them so that they could send a delegation to the council. But the ship was obviously sabotaged and it didn't get where it was supposed to go.
Okay, so he's like a diplomat or an ambassador.
Yeah, diplomat or ambassador. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, so her job is normally to a pilgrim guide, meaning helping people who are trying to get to difficult to reach religious sites or like one specific place.
So she lives on a you can picture kind of I actually have a picture of the map. Hang on, but she lives in like the central ocean of this world, but it's entirely sand. So I had this idea before Brandon Sanderson did the like particulate with air bubbles going through it ocean, but that's basically the idea. Is it's a desert that has creatures on the bottom of it that release air bubbles, so it's like fluidized. So it's incredibly hostile, but she lives on like a monastery that's out there that like guide people to the north, the northernmost point, which is like the holy site for the religion.
So they live on like an ocean of sand, basically?
Yes, yeah, basically.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I didn't even get that from the logline. I mean, that might even be worth kind of mentioning, or like.
Oh, good. Okay. Yeah, I didn't know how specific to be.
Yeah, I guess because the logline, we're trying to hook the reader. I mean, and yeah, you're correct that you have to find that balance between too much info and enough info that you're like, oh, that's what's unique and cool about this. So let me ask a few more questions, and then I think we can find a really strong way to phrase this. So she rescues an ambassador from a sabotaged ship, so she saves his life. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. He, he's been there for almost like a week. He's basically been trapped underneath a box of provisions. So the people that attacked the ship didn't see him. And so, but he's been surviving on the provisions, but he's nearly dead. So.
Okay. And what has that got to do with, like, how is this tied into her broader goal of stopping the conclave that would destroy her life and awaken the ancient threat?
So she takes this guy Melos back to her monastery, and because it's incredibly close to a religious holiday that almost basically every other priest in the monastery has they already have pilgrims that they have to guide to the north, like they've been paid. So she's the only one that's free to be able to actually go to down to this council. So she is sent by her abbot to go and like delay the council as long as possible so that the delegations can get down there.
Hang on, I think I maybe didn't quite understand the nuances of this answer. Let me ask again.
Sorry.
So she rescues a guy, and now why does she need to? How does that tie into stopping these bad guys? Like, is this guy needed to help fight the bad guys, or what exactly is going on there?
So basically, because the ship was sabotaged, the people that are on her, there's like two sides of this religion. So there's like there's like a schism that's being threatened to happen, right? And so the people that are on her side aren't going to be able to get down there in time. And so basically the worry is that if she doesn't get down there, it's going to be only the people that are opposed their beliefs.
So she needs to get the ambassador to a city so he can like cast a vote or something?
Yeah, so she takes him down to the city to like explain that his ship never made it to the people and to basically request a delay of the council because the people that were intended to be invited never got the invitation.
Okay, so she's rescuing essentially a politician or like somebody who could politically save or prevent the destruction of her home.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
The actual council is on. Here, I'm gonna share the map. So the actual council is over whether or not these pilgrimages are actually necessary, and so because if the council goes the other way, then basically people are going to stop coming to the north, which is at the very center of the map, and basically her way of life may die out because it's getting more and more expensive. And the Sarda, which is in the bottom there, is sort of the global like hegemon, and so I don't know a good like concise way to explain the stakes.
I mean, it could be that the stakes are just kind of nebulous and like they feel a little bit diffuse and urgent. It's like something may eventually kind of come to threaten her way of life economically. Just doesn't feel like the Death Star is going to blow up my planet. You know what I mean? Like, it's not to say that you have to write it like an action movie, but I guess just if you're in presenting the basics of the story, I think it just has to feel like important and urgent. And so I would.
I have another potential stakes. There's basically like a pope to the religion, and in an alternate version of the story, instead of it being kind of like a schism type thing, it was more of like a trial. So like he's on trial, and they need to send for the different bishops, let's say, in order to judge him, and so. He's incredibly important to like her faith or something like that, and so she needs to go and save him or something like that.
Okay, and if the Pope is deposed, a bad guy will take over or something like this?
Right. Yeah, something like that.
Okay,
yeah.
like
and
an
then
evil Pope.
Yes, basically that there's a heretical faction that's threatening to usurp him. That idea.
Okay, that's pretty cool. And so in that case, is the monastic way of life really important in this world, like the Jedi, or are they kind of just like a religious order that keeps to themselves, or do they have some sort of like greater importance?
Yeah, there's there is a magic system that they have access to that is just very important, I guess, culturally.
Culturally, okay, but not in the sense that like so like for instance, we could say that the Justice League are important culturally, but they also have a job, which is like stopping supervillains. Like, so do they have like a? Right. I guess my question is a more specific, grander purpose.
I mean, they have like religious significance to people's lives, but it's not a we fight off the bad guys. That sort of importance.
Okay, gotcha. So yeah, okay. In that case, so you are really interested in like political stakes in this story.
Yeah,
and that does make it sort of tough to figure out the best way to present it in the way that makes it feel the most urgent and also just easy to understand. And so what I would say is that I like the idea, especially of, well, so the simple nature of the plot, it sounds like, is I have to get this guy from place A to place B, or else something bad will happen. Or are you saying that's only like part of the story, or is that the whole thing?
Yeah, that would be the first, I guess, first act. Into the second, she does get down to the city, and then there's different political actors that are down there.
Okay, and then when she's in the city, you're saying she becomes part of that political action, and most of the story takes place in like boardrooms and like throne rooms and councils and stuff like that?
Yeah, basically.
It is. Okay, so this is not like an adventure or action-based story?
No, and that's what I'm debating is if like the premise that I have is best. I think it's best because it's making promises of a political nature. Mm-hmm. So I don't think paying those off with although I love adventure travelogue type things. I'm just I feel like it may be the wrong premise if I'm doing that sort of a plot.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if you even need like this reawakening ancient threat if you want to do something that's primarily political.
True.
Especially because like if that's unless you're saying the way that we're going to combat this ancient threat is through making like treaties and things like this, which I guess
that's a good point.
It could be. There are certain series that balance this. Like, I mean, Game of Thrones is kind of both in a way. It's like, I would say about 80% political drama and like 20% epic Lord of the Rings type fantasy, which is kind of a weird balance. But in any case, so yeah, clearly you understand the idea of setting promises. And this concept of, your logline it makes some of those first initial and most important promises, which is it's going to tell you what is the sort of fun that we're going to have here in the story, and also what is the hook, who are we following, and what does that kind of look like. So I guess in designing your logline, maybe it's going to come down to you just deciding what the scope of your story is, and either pulling back on it, as in like trying to find a way to make it really clear why this is a very personal journey for this character. And like explaining it in terms of, because like you're just reading this logline, it's pretty unclear what's important. I mean, I guess I would understand that her way of life isn't, like, everyone's way of life is important to them, for the most part. Unless you hate your life, then most people's way of life is important to them, right? But then I wasn't quite understanding where's the ancient threat coming from, and how does that tie into this guy that she's rescuing? If what she's doing, and so you could, and that's why I was thinking, like, is this an action story about I have to escort this guy across this deadly desert to get him to a place where he can cast a vote? Or is this going to be more like that's only the intro to the story, and the majority of it is going to be my main character is signing treaties and like attending council hearings and things like this. In which case, it might be a little bit better, perhaps, to start the logline a little later, and rather than saying like after she rescues this guy, then she needs to go on this journey. It would be a little bit more like after she arrives in the city with this ambassador, she joins the regency, or she joins the a priest becomes a politician and now must defeat this political party that is opposing her way of life. Something like that might sort of set the promise that this is going to be a little bit more like The West Wing than a Sanderson book.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, because I think I've got three plot threads that feel really disconnected right now, because I've got her and her sort of journey down to this foreign nation that she doesn't really understand. I've got the political, like the council and like the different factions that are at play there. And then the third thing is I have a how do you describe it? So the magic system involves these golems that are they're the main source of the most valuable like material on the planet called Asherite. In any case, they're basically, there's a treasury of like golems that are a like terracotta army type thing, and one of them has reawakened unbeknownst to everybody. They think that they're just kind of statues and they're used as their main currency, and so that's kind of the like more magical thread that's happening. But like you said, it's hard because they're so disparate. Like I don't know if maybe I just need to focus on one or two of them. I don't know.
So are there action scenes? Would you envision there to be action type sequences in the book?
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
You do? Okay. So I guess in that case, it's not all just taking place in boardrooms and council meetings. There is some fighting and flashy visual magic stuff that is to be done.
Yes, and there's and that does interact with the politics a little bit, because there's some assassinations that happen. There's there's armies that are involved, but that are anyway. But yeah, so I'm a little bit scatterbrained right now. Sorry.
That's okay. No, that's fine. That's what this is all for. So, I would try to find the focus of your story in a way that you can express what she's trying to do in one sentence. So, a story like where you say she's rescuing a guy and she must journey to a place, I think paints the picture this is going to be more of a travelogue. If you don't want to give that impression, and instead you want to give the idea that this is going to be more of a chamber drama where we are, having debates in throne rooms and councils and things like this, then I would probably start the logline a little later, like when she arrives at that place. And that may require, maybe that would even require you to move that up in terms of the story itself a little bit. Like that could start a little sooner rather than waiting a while to get into what you would call the core premise. And I also, it might be a little helpful if your main character wasn't such an outsider, because like if it's such a political story, I guess is the reason you're doing that so that we have kind of a way into the politics and to make it easier for the audience to understand.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, it's that's it.
Gotcha. Okay, because I would also think like if you really wanted to get into that aspect of the story, it might be helpful to have your central POV be somebody who knows a little bit more about it. Like maybe that envoy himself would be the main character, and this pilgrim was kind of like someone he meets along the way, or something like this, so that he'd be a little bit more adept in the political arena, perhaps. It's up to you, really. I mean, if an outsider character can work, but it just sort of feels like she'll need so much more onboarding to even understand. If you were doing a political story with someone who doesn't understand politics, you know how that it just feels like, how are they even going to meaningfully contribute? Unless it could be that maybe the hook, maybe that's the hook though. Maybe the hook is he's like, I need a common rube to like testify. I need some hick from the mountains who doesn't know a thing about anything to be on my team for some reason. Maybe that could be. What do you think? I don't know. Could that be part of the hook?
Could be. Yeah, I'll think a little bit more about it. I've also got my secondary character who is more politically savvy. He's in the city, kind of a magistrate.
Okay. Yeah, it feels like characters that would live in those political systems would have more at stake than somebody who lives outside. But I guess you are saying she does run the risk of being like steamrolled essentially by the evil cult's takeover. So I do get it. But I guess you typically want to have the main character that is most able to participate in the action that you've designed. So that would mean if we want to do lots of politics, I have a character who can meaningfully participate in that. Otherwise, maybe she has some other role, like maybe he needs a bodyguard or something, like, or maybe he needs a spiritual advisor or somebody to speak to religious matters that he's unequipped to speak to himself. Or like maybe she can become the advocate, like for her community, and in that way needs to actually become. Maybe the story is her sort of trying to figure out the system and how it works.
Yeah.
Lots of different ideas. I know I'm throwing a lot at you.
But it's good to, because I haven't really had to speak it out loud before, so this is really helpful.
Yeah, sometimes it's useful just to have to articulate and get it all in working order. But so right now I'd focus on what kind of action is the story mostly going to feature, and that I would kind of shape your logline around that, in the sense of we want to make it sound like your character. So if you only have one sentence to express, then it should sound like you pick a verb and an obstacle and an objective that feels like it's going to bring that kind of conflict to the forefront. So it's like she must gather 12 votes to take down the Council of the Red Cardinals before they pass a law that will end her way of life. You see how that kind of implies a certain kind of action, as opposed to like she must journey through the heart of the windless desert. That sounds like a sort of Conan style sword and sorcery.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah,
so to that end, I would try to frame the central action a little bit more clearly and concretely, just because things like journeying into a mire of intrigue is more like a description of the type of conflict, but it's not a specific conflict.
Good point. Yeah. Okay.
So try to find that concrete and tangible goal, whether it's like I need to get 12 votes, or I need to raise a party of supporters, or I need to vote somebody out of in office, or I need to gather support for something, or I'm sure there's like a million different political goals that you could potentially frame it around. But the more concrete, the better.
That's the trouble. Is like I've got in each of the sections, I've got like, okay, now her main goal is this. Now her main goal is this. Like now her main goal is this. And it is a little bit hard to find like what the central action she's trying to do is.
Yeah, it sounds like she's mostly trying to save her home, right? And if everything is in service of that, then it can still feel like she has a cohesive objective all throughout. We would just have to understand that simple central goal has many steps that you may have to actually take to get there. Maybe you have to, but the more concrete and tangible you can make it, though, the easier it is to measure the progress, because especially politics can be so abstract, right? It's like I need to gather support, but what does support mean? If the more that you can kind of externalize and concretify it, I guess you would say, what's the word? Solidify it into like, I need to get these 5 people to agree to this thing, or I need to get 3 signatures, or I need to get the president to call this hearing. The more that you can make it something specific and something that feels like we can definitively tell it has been done, then that just helps kind of clarify those goals a bit.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Do you have any last questions on this before we move on? I mean, you can feel free to work on this as you please in the class today.
Yeah, I'll probably just work on it. I may also write an alternate logline where the current secondary main character is more of the main character, because he might be more interesting to if we're having somebody who's already kind of involved and has more immediate stakes. I think he's definitely got more immediate stakes on the everything going on.
Maybe it's like, a struggling ambassador or politician. He gets a Hail Mary in the form of this girl that rescues him from his crashed ship. And now he needs her for something. Now she's going to be the key that he's going to use towards fulfilling his goals or ambitions.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Thanks. I'll if there's any time after everybody's gone through theirs, I may pop back in. But
no problem.
I appreciate it.
We should have time. Thanks for sharing. Hope that was helpful. Okay. Thanks, Ryan. So we have plenty of time today, and I wanted to keep this kind of a looser and more open session with the text way off center. 1 second. A looser and more open session to get your work ready for starting in November for NaNoWriMo. That means that we can look at whatever stage you currently have ready to go for your book, whether you have, oh my gosh, I'm just like a ghost. Turn that contrast down. There we go. Whether you are on the logline stage or the outline stage, scene cards, or the story beats, now is a good time to break those problems and to get your work into shape. The ideal being that you'll have a really solid plan of what happens in every chapter by the time you start. I usually am going to be writing my scene cards that are about 20 to 35 pages long. So some people require more prep or some require less, but I find that about 30 pages of like really solid outline material is a good place to start. Okay, gotta figure out how to turn the contrast down. Let's ask who else would like to work on their outline or story premise or any plot problems they're having. Luke says logline. Yep, sure, let's do logline. All right, let's
The
take a look.
problem is it's only half a log line.
Oh no.
Let me
Well, step
repost
one.
it.
Write the other half. Is this the Moons Over Macomb one that I'm seeing in the chat?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, why don't you read it out?
Getting background noise. I hope you don't hear that. A gifted alchemist takes on a lucrative secret experiment under the employ of a vampire politician's estranged wife and blood-sucking twin daughters.
All right, and you said it was half a logline, meaning what?
It doesn't really have the meat of the story, but I don't know. The big thing happens in Act 3, and I don't know if I want to give that away in the log line where she must sort of help them escape from.
That's like a twist, you're saying.
Yeah, but the meat is sort of like her trying to navigate these two different worlds. And I guess the meat also would be the B plot about the politician sort of going from this benevolent, everybody loves him, to this terrifying being who must be stopped at all costs.
Okay. Let me read it one more time. So, a gifted alchemist takes on a lucrative secret experiment under the employ of a vampire politician's estranged wife and blood-sucking twin daughters. What is the experiment?
She's been employed by this woman to cure her daughters of vampirism.
But you're saying that is a twist that you don't want to give away?
That's not the twist. I mean, I could give that away, I guess, in the log line, but it's not that important what the experiment is. It just doesn't have like what we're going to be doing for most of the book.
So she's not actually trying to cure them of their vampire disease?
Well, I guess that is sort of the A plot, but the B plot is about the downfall of this vampire politician.
So she's contributing directly to that downfall?
No, she's trying to. I don't know. She becomes disillusioned. She has to protect his family from him. I don't know how to explain it.
I think I get it. So yeah, this is kind of like a classic Gothic archetype where you have the what are they called, governess that comes to stay with the Byronic hero in his house, his big spooky mansion.
Exactly.
In which there are rooms you shall never go inside. So yeah, we've seen this many times. I think so. So to begin with, I would definitely include the part where he hires her to cure his daughters of vampirism. So
Well, she hires her in secret. She doesn't want him to know about this.
Oh, what does he think that she's there for?
He thinks she's there as sort of like a, healthcare practitioner or something.
Oh,
like
okay.
Doing,
like a live-in doctor for the kids?
Yeah, basically, yeah, for the kids.
Okay. Even though he knows they're vampires and that they would not need a human doctor? Or that they would not need a...
Right, but she's a talented alchemist. They need someone, like, gifted. And
is there something wrong with them in his mind?
in his mind...
Yeah, I'm just wondering
they
why...
kind of resent the gift, I guess. That's... I don't know, they're estranged. Like, he doesn't... Like, he tolerates them. He sort of, like, takes, pays for them or whatever, but... they don't have a good relationship.
Okay.
Is there something wrong with them, though? I don't know.
Yeah, I wonder if there's just any pretense by which she could be there. and that would not make him suspicious.
So one of the twins doesn't speak.
Oh, you can use
Maybe
that.
there could be something with that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
she's
that-
psychic. She doesn't need to speak. I don't know. Like,
Oh, does the vampire know that?
I would assume he would have a sort of, he would be able to sense what their gifts are, since he
Well,
shares their blood. And
if
he sort
not,
of
then
gave
it would
them
make
these
a good.
gifts.
If not, then it would make a good keeper for her. I mean, like, I'm here to help your daughter learn to speak, and she's really, the wife is like, but you're really here to help cure them of their vampiness.
Yeah, it doesn't really connect. Like, why would you need a alchemist for that?
Well, she would just be there as a doctor, I guess, in that sense.
Right.
Anyway, so let's just go take one step back. So she takes on, I guess, just so it's on its surface that just the terms of her being there are kind of complicated. So that does kind of just make presenting the logline a little tricky. So she gets hired by the wife to cure the daughters, and the main character is doing this just for money.
She's doing it for the challenge. She's tired of all the boring jobs and stuff. She has money, is the way I'm going with it. But she loves alchemy. She wants like a real challenge, like something to actually sink her talents into, rather than curing people of bunions and giving old men boners and stuff.
Okay, so is she like opposed to vampires, or doesn't think that they don't belong, or something like that? Does she have some ideological objection to the undead?
I don't think so, because they're like, her whatever reserves she has are quickly sort of swept under the rug by meeting this Byronic hero, this politician who's going to bring vampires and mortals into this new golden age or whatever. She kind of believes it.
Mm-hmm. So I guess
until she's
you were
disillusioned.
talking about. Sorry, go ahead.
But she becomes disillusioned, like like seeing behind the scenes sort of tells her there's more going on here, and like his family being estranged, and I don't know. She has some doubts about him, but
She becomes disillusioned, so she starts the story thinking he's not a bad guy and thinking that he could actually be all the things
Right.
that he's promising as a politician.
yes,
Really? Okay, so she trusts him to start with and does not see him as suspicious.
I mean she doesn't even know him. She doesn't really care for politics, but when she meets him, sort of believes in him.
Oh.
That makes sense.
Okay, so all right. So, but it sounds like you were talking about the meat of your story is that she is trying to escape with the kids while not getting discovered by the vampire. Is that right?
That's in Act 3. Is
That's
they
Act
must
3.
escape.
Okay.
Act 2 is like she has this ethical dilemma. Like she believes in this politician, but she also really wants this to sink her teeth into something challenging. But that challenging thing is sort of working directly against this politician in secret. So she's like navigating these two worlds and trying to, just survive and keep doing what she's doing.
And what is it exactly that is so promising about him that inspires people to believe in him so much?
He's very charismatic. He has loads of wealth that he spreads around to people. Her dad died in a labor riot, and he is sort of like pro-labor, pro-worker, that kind of thing. The little guy is important. It's a lot of turn of the century characters in history were like this.
But didn't you say she doesn't care about politics that much?
I mean, she doesn't care about politics that much, but this one sort of speaks to her directly. So now she believes in him. So maybe she does care when she meets him.
I guess it just feels a little abstract. Like it might be helpful if there was one sort of central element of his platform that he was running on. Like, I'm hereby running to integrate vampires with human society, or something like that. Like some really clear objective or aspect of his platform that would either win people over or it would just be a clearer reason why your character would believe in this guy if she doesn't care. If like it might just be more viable than, well, he sets a good tax rate or something like that.
Well, I think maybe she could see him take over the business that her dad like died in, that treated all these workers like miserably, and assaulted them and ultimately murdered some of them, and sort of gives all these people, nice salaries and benefits and worker housing and all this kind of stuff.
Oh, okay. So he's like a champion of the working class.
Yes.
Got it. Okay, that's interesting. So in that case, then he is sort of like maybe even a borderline revolutionary figure.
Yeah, there's a lot of character. Like even the town I live in was founded by like a shoe company guy, and he like paid all his workers really well and like gave them houses. Like he lived like right next door to all like the company houses and stuff.
Okay, so he's like a hero.
Really
to the
popular
people.
guy.
He's like a crusading politician who wants to bring up the working class and sort of like serve the common man, right?
Yeah, there was this turn of the century idea that like if you pay workers really well, you'll increase productivity and you'll ultimately make more money yourself.
Crazy. Imagine.
Imagine.
Right. Okay, so that's interesting. I get a little now that I've asked all these questions. I get a little bit more now what the tension is in the story, because the connection between the vampire and your protagonist was just a little bit unclear. It seemed like if it's just his wife that's hiring her, like, and he doesn't even pay that much attention to the kids, would it even be that difficult for her to either help them escape or to like to work against him? But if
he's very powerful, and he has like eyes everywhere and spies and stuff. So,
okay.
It's hard to do things in secret.
Right, that makes sense. Okay, but in this case, so let me just ask. So, if we were to frame the story like this, there's you have this alchemist that gets hired to take care of this crusading, like white knight style politician that everybody loves, or the working class loves. Maybe the ruling elite doesn't sort of love him, and she's like starstruck by him at first. Maybe it works better if he's the one that hires her.
To do what?
To either work with the kids or to if she's an alchemist. I mean, aren't there other things that that I don't even know what an alchemist does in your world? Do they make potions?
Yeah, potions. They basically produce magical effects through alchemical means. They're like chemists with plus magic.
Mm-hmm.
So think of a 19th century or turn of the century chemist.
Okay, are they common?
They're not very common. There's magic is sort of relegated to the wealthy in this world, and she was not wealthy, and she does not have the ability to use magic. She can only do alchemy.
Okay, interesting. So, so there's a difference between magic and alchemy as well. You're saying so it's like chemistry magic versus arcane magic.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. So there's a lot going on here. It's a complicated world. But if the basics are, it's like the governess in the house trying to cure, and you're saying she actually is trying to cure the kids throughout the second act?
Yes, that's the main thing in the second act. I think.
Okay.
Maybe I should just spoil that.
I think you just definitely need to include that in the logline for sure. So then we know what is the meat of the story. What are we mostly watching? So this alchemist is hired to secretly cure the children of a vampire politician from their curse. And I mean, what else do you need besides that? I mean, that covers a lot of it.
That's probably enough.
Yeah, we would kind of be able to imply that eventually they need to escape. I don't think you need to include much more than that. Like, I understand the threat is he'll find out about them, and then he'll kill her or turn her into a vampire, I assume, right?
Yeah. Do we need an adjective for him, like a beloved vampire politician or something?
I think for sure something like that, because otherwise just calling him a vampire politician on its own makes him sound pretty sinister and doesn't quite paint the full picture of his reputation within the world.
Okay.
So yeah, I think you have the right idea. I'm not sure that I know I'm not typing the specific phrasing because I'm holding the microphone, but I would definitely frame it around that singular central goal of I'm trying to cure these kids in secret and prevent their monster dad from finding out.
All right.
Okay, hope that helps. Any last questions on this one?
Nope. I'll try to work on it.
Sounds good. Yeah, feel free to share an update in a bit if you'd like. And there's also,
Alright.
looks like some folks have left some suggestions in the chat for you. If that is useful to you, feel free to take
Yeah,
a look.
there's some good suggestions there for sure.
Awesome. Thanks, Luke. Let's ask anyone else want to work on a logline, an outline, a story question, a story problem. I'll just leave up a couple of these slides that we were looking at in the previous weeks. Hopefully everyone has a good sense of how the tense and POV of my book is going to work. Michelle, go ahead.
Oh, hi, how are you?
Good. How's your project going?
It's going okay. I just want to rewrite the second act, and um, I'm afraid if I do it the way I was thinking of, it's going to be much too long. I was going to make the second act basically outlined along the different things that have to be done to save the world, and I was going to have the World War interspersed along that, and but I'm not too sure. Should I start the war in the very middle of the book? That's what my instincts tell me. So I'm not too sure what else to do besides that. I'm not like I've begun this part with the Secretary of the Interior, where where all the action is gonna go through, because they're gonna be underground. That it's just a very short scene where the paperwork is given to the Secretary of the Interior, and I make a note that even though it's like 21:30, that the government is still requiring paper to be used for in case computer files get lost anyway, or deleted anyway. So and I wasn't sure what to do next for the outline, but that's just my issue.
So is the war, would you consider that to be like the main meat of the book? Is that like the central conflict, or is that a secondary conflict to the main one?
It's really the secondary conflict. It's just, we have that we have to save most of humanity, or as much of humanity and all living things as possible. And now we got a world war on top of it.
Okay. I see. So in that case, maybe it would work well in the escalation, which would occur after the midpoint. If you want this to be a secondary sort of escalating, like secondary factor, not exactly like the main crux of the problem, but this is something that compounds and exponentially, amplifies the main problem, then escalation is a great section of the story to do that. So right after the midpoint, up until about the 75% mark, that might be a good place to start.
Okay. All right. That sounds good. And I'm not sure what other characters to provide or to write in for creating the outlining for the second part of the book, where all the plans are being made to to save the planet. I'm not sure who to include in there besides the president and the lead scientist. I figure I've got to, include the right people from the government and other governments, but I'm just not sure exactly, who to provide, besides like biologists, geologists, things, things like that.
Well, so you don't need to expand your point of view characters, at least if you have. I mean, you can write a whole book with just two points of view if you want. If you're talking about other characters that just need to be like in the worlds, not necessarily, controlling the narrative from their point of view, then it really just depends on what the specific conflict is. I mean, you can also look up governmental structures to see. I mean, assuming that your government works pretty much the same way even after this apocalyptic event, you can look up various agencies or departments that exist even now and see what they cover, what their responsibilities and roles are. You would probably have. And within the scope of your story, you can limit it. It doesn't have to be strictly realistic. You could say, I have one person that's in charge of environmental effects or like the environmental ramifications of our plans. You could have one person that's in charge of military. You have one person that's in charge of logistics. You have one person that's in charge of demographics or something like that. You can split it up however you want. The audience is not going to remember that many names, so in fact, it actually is to your benefit to have fewer characters there. So you really don't need to go crazy on adding characters. I would just mostly stick to your points of view, and then in terms of other tasks or obstacles coming up and needing to be dealt with, normally your point of view characters are going to stick to the obstacles that are within their own scope and power. You don't have to show every single thing being dealt with by every character.
Okay.
So yeah, try to keep it to where the most interesting stuff is happening, including like the drama. So if you have a protagonist and a central relationship, which might be your scientist and your president character, that can be a really strong core for your story. Maybe you would need an antagonist as well. Like it could be helpful to have one. You don't necessarily need one, but and you can always consider the situation is sort of the antagonist in a certain way in a disaster story. Go ahead.
And the other. In the story, I was thinking that that I hadn't decided if whether or not some of the central antagonists politically are still the same, because this is basically a 100 years in the future, and so, those people are not going to be alive, but I was wondering if maybe some of those countries are kind of, if their political systems are very much the same, like ours has been for over 200 years. So I wondered if maybe that would still be the same, or if I should, crack out, break out my political scientist thinking cap and say, oh, right, let me extrapolate where this is going to go based upon this, which might take me a few days to do, which might be interesting, but I still thought that the war was going to be, a really good thing to do, because the higher the stakes, often that's when war breaks out. Anyway, so I was thinking, can you have more one antagonist?
Yeah, you definitely can.
Okay, so maybe it's going to be a combination of the situation, which is, this gamma ray burst, and then different heads of state. I was thinking the traditional ones like Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, and that those things, that a war breaks out between them and drags the U.S. into there, and so anyway, that's so I just have to think of some new heads of state for that, and anyway, those are just the issues that I had, just trying to think of exactly who to put in, and that's all.
Okay. So you do not need to add a bunch more characters. 2 central characters is plenty for a novel, especially with your first couple. If you're still finding your feet in terms of writing novels, less characters is going to be easier to manage. So, go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking, those foreign heads of state, they aren't going to play huge roles, but more like they need to be talked about, oh, the president of the Russian Federation, has has said this, about us, and or they're
Right.
now, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Not
I understand. So yeah, you're right. You will have to come up with just a couple names here and there, but just as long as you're aware the audience can't remember that many. So the more you
Right.
have, the more we're gonna have to we're gonna be like, oh, is there a glossary here? Is there like a cast list that I need to be checking? Which can be some books actually do have, believe it or not, but it can just make it harder to get into a story that has that many names to learn.
right. Yeah, and I don't know a whole bunch of names from that country. I would have to go to the internet and like look up names,
Right.
and so but yeah, I mean, I was thinking it would be more like, somebody is on TV and is speaking, if TV even exists, if it isn't some other format, um, and is making statements about the U.S. or maybe there's a briefing and with the president that the president's daily briefing that says, well, the let's see, the leader of the Chinese, the president of China or whatever it would be,
Right.
has said, that
Yes.
blah 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 blah
So yeah,
blah.
for sure, you'll have to come up with some other characters and character names, definitely.
Right. But now I've just got to figure out what is this conflict going to be, because everybody has been basically all the leaders have been held to to the secret that they can't divulge. Of course, I don't know what's there to prevent them from it, but just rather maybe everybody just realizes that they're just not ready for that level of worldwide panic yet, you know. Um, but and that is something later on that is going to happen, that people begin panicking, and the um, military or guards have to be pulled out, and that sort of thing.
I see.
So, and I'm taking like a lot of inspiration from Deep Impact, and what's that other one?
Armageddon, maybe?
No, not Armageddon. The other one where the kid discovers the meteor, or maybe that is Deep Impact. Yeah, maybe that's the one. Anyway, so that's it. I felt like that one did a good job of showing what might happen to a society, if that sort of situation happens.
Okay,
You
great.
know,
Awesome. So have
And-
I answered your question for the moment? Did you have another question related to your novel that would help you get sort of unstuck? I think we've established, yes, you'll have to come up with a cast of sort of political characters.
yeah. No, I think that's pretty much it. If I have any more questions, I'll come to you.
Okay, no worries. Thank you for those.
Yeah.
All right. So, just a quick recap. Your protagonist is usually going to form that sort of like the backbone of your A story, which is what we consider to be the main conflict of the book. Not every book needs to have a bunch of subplots. You can have as many or as few subplots as you want. But if you're trying to limit your scope to something less than 100,000 words, then usually you're going to be benefiting from having like around 3 POVs. If you have like 4 to 8, it's very easy for the story to get hugely expansive in scope. And unless you're writing epic fantasy, epic sci-fi, epic historical, or something like that, then I would try to write as few characters' points of view as you can. Meaning, if you can simplify or combine characters, then do so. It is there are certain challenges in writing single POV, but it also is a lot easier to handle and manage in some ways. Okay, I think Luke posted an updated logline. Let's take a look. Hired by the wife of a beloved vampire politician, a gifted alchemist works in secret to cure her estranged twin daughters of their curse. Whose daughters?
The wife.
The wife's daughters.
That
But
is unclear.
I would say his daughters, the politician's daughters.
Okay,
I mean, I know it's both of theirs, but
they're both.
right. So hired by the wife of beloved vampire politician, a gifted alchemist works in secret to cure his estranged twin daughters of their curse. Great. I think that works pretty well.
All right.
And the
Is there-
implication being that the obstacle or threat is that works in secret. I guess it does sort of imply that the threat or obstacle is the dad, and that if he gets mad, if he finds out, he'll fire her or kill her.
Probably just kill her, make her disappear.
I see. Beloved vampire politician. Okay, yeah. So this does work well. The only thing is that it just sort of does imply what that threat is. Maybe if you could, I wonder if there might be some way to say that he's like, like on the surface he's beloved by everybody, but really he's evil. Or maybe you don't really need to. I'm just thinking out loud, because it does sort of just make the or the obstacle a little bit murky. I wonder. What do you think?
There's probably a way to say that he's duplicitous in some way, or that there's more going on behind the beloved.
Like a gifted alchemist works in secret to cure his daughters of their curse before he blank and blank, before he completes his evil scheme of some kinds.
Well, I tried before he finds out, but
yeah, I guess that it just is kind of implied by saying it works in secret, though. I wonder. I think this does work pretty well for now, though. That does feel like a more focused direction for the plot, and I can grasp what the plot would look like from this.
Yeah, just it's more clear than lucrative secret experiment.
Right. Then our first question is, well, what is the experiment? What are the rules? What are the terms? What is being tested, and by whom? Okay, so yeah, maybe let's leave this one for now, and we can come back to it. Maybe we'll just try to look at it with fresh eyes later. But I think that, and if anybody else has an idea for it, then of course feel free to speak up. But I think that is working pretty well in general. Nice rewrite. Okay, let's reopen the floor to anybody else that wants to share logline, outline, or anything else they're working on. This is just like a novel lab, basically. Oh, there you are.
Okay, hey. Okay, so I've kind of done some reevaluating of the three plots, and I think actually the most interesting angle is the golems plot. So I've made a new logline with the awakened golem as the main character. Yeah, so this is very different.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, it's after a golem reawakens after a millennia of stasis, he must escape from a city that uses golem parts as currency with the help of a masked priest, becoming a catalyst for religious revolution.
Wow. That sounds cool.
Sorry, I misspelled millennia. That's my bad.
That's okay. Okay. So a golem reawakens after a millennia of stasis. He must escape from a city that uses golem parts as currency with the help of a masked priest, becoming a catalyst for a religious revolution. This sounds very different, but I do love it. Can I ask a few questions? So,
Sure.
This feels like a more action adventure focused story, and much less political. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so there are going to be political actors that are going on behind the scenes, but it's much more focused on the golems kind of coming to terms with, what he is, and also where he is, and escaping the world, escaping this danger.
Right. And they use golem parts. Is that the only currency?
No, so the way the currency works, he's made of golems are made of this very valuable material that's it's effectively like their only main source of it's like metal, but it's it holds a shape incredibly well. It's reactive to the sort of magic system that they use. It's the only I don't know. It's used in like weapons and stuff like that. So the city has a vault that has these golems in it, and they don't actually often trade with the actual currency itself, like the actual kind of like a gold-based system. You don't actually trade with gold itself. They have like ceramic marks that are like worth a certain amount of fingers, hands, skulls, or whatever. And so.
Oh, okay.
but yeah,
It's a golem standard currency, I guess is what you're
yeah,
saying.
golem standard.
It's,
Yeah.
They have like golem bullion that is stored in their bank that you can redeem money for.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh wow.
And
Okay,
so,
so they're made of gold essentially.
they're made of gold. Yeah.
Is it actual gold or just like fantasy equivalent of gold?
No, it's a type of black stone. It's kind of like a you can think of like kind of carbon nanotubes, that sort of vibe. But it reacts to the main magic system is called true speech in the world. Every time anybody speaks, a little glyph of light comes out of their mouth, or raises up from them, that like is kind of the like true meaning of whatever they said, effectively.
Whoa.
But that also, if it's like stamped onto these, the pieces of azurite, which is that material, then it can create certain effects. So like they have, if you have a thing that just says like move stamped onto it, then it like that piece of azurite will want to move in that direction. So it's kind of like a little bit of programming almost.
Cool. So you can like imprint magical commands onto this stone that sort of work like scrolls.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
Got it. Okay. So this is pretty cool. I really like this. And it's a little, I think, misleading to say they use golem parts as currency, just because that sounds like that's all they use, and maybe that golems are really common. But I think what you're really saying is that the golem is just made of a very valuable material.
That's right.
Okay. And maybe then, so let me ask: is the city in like? You don't necessarily have to go this direction, but I'm just thinking this might sort of highlight what the stakes are. If you're like in an impoverished city, a golem made of gold needs to escape an impoverished city. Just feels like it has that kind of like built-in obstacle that's like really clear. Like obviously anybody would tear him apart if they could, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So is that the case, or like I don't know? Is it just that like? I'm wondering how substantial the threat is. Is there like somebody specific coming after him, or is it just that he's so valuable that anyone would grab a piece of him if they could?
It's a mix. So like there is like stratification to the city. So there's like there's an undercity kind of element. But also just the fact that this is not something that normally happens. Like people have mythology about the golems, once being alive and stuff. But it's kind of a post sci-fi setting. You could think of it.
Okay.
So this is like the first time this has happened. So he's also just afraid of being, I don't know exactly how to, parse that out.
That's okay. So is there one specific group or person that's after him?
A couple, yeah. So there's the one of the main, I guess, antagonists now. He was kind of a deuteragonist before, but one of the main antagonists is kind of an auditor who notices that there's a single golem missing from the treasury, and so he's kind of after what he thinks initially is a thief that's stolen a very modest sum from the treasury.
Oh, he was in the bank. He was banked already.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, he was in the bank.
Oh,
so
okay. That feels like it matters for the stakes. So
yeah.
In this case, maybe there's a way that you can rephrase this to sort of say something like, after the golem reawakens or like escapes from a treasury, I know I keep referring to him as gold just because that's the simplest way to explain it in my mind, but something like after a golden golem awakes and escapes from the treasury where he's been interred, he now must get out of the city, being pursued by, I don't know, the treasurer that's after him or something like that. Would just kind of, that almost has that great cat and mouse Terminator sort of element to it, where you have that one relentless pursuer, or like what's it called, No Country for Old Men sort of thing, where it's like you have the relentless pursuer, and then it would be really clear why that was happening if you're like, oh, he was in their bank, now he's leaving, they can't spend him anymore. That's really cool. I think your logline it almost reflects that, but not quite. It's pretty close. Okay. It seems like ultimately it's less that you don't want to say that it's in a city that uses golem parts as currency, probably just because that implies that every merchant on every corner is spending like golem arms and stuff like that. When in reality, it's more like
that's kind of a cool visual. But
it is kind of cool. I mean, and I think it sort of seemed like you were hinting at that idea that in Victorian era they used like mummy parts as really valuable trade. You've probably heard of that.
Definitely.
Which is really creepy. But in any case,
I can imagine somebody making a paint out of azurite as a, like they had the mummy white.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, like makeup or anything. And so, in any case, but I would use those words instead on saying who's after him and why. So he's in the treasury. He is made of a valuable substance. He's escaped. It's like he's like Pinocchio'd himself into existence, and now he needs to get away from the people that want the greedy treasurer, I guess, or the agents of the treasurer that want him back.
Yeah. So that's the one angle, and then there's also the golems are really connected to the religion of this world, because the mask that I mentioned, it's a masked priest. The masks that the priests wear are actually the faces of the golems, because they there's sort of property where if you look through the golem's eyes, you can understand that true speech. Whenever anybody speaks, you can understand it, whatever the language.
So golems already by default understand that inherently.
Yes, and so he can understand everybody else, but the only people who can understand him are the priests.
Oh.
So, because he speaks the ancient, tongue that's gone extinct from whatever the world was before.
Got it. Okay.
So-
It won't quite fit in the logline just because it's that is more like stuff to discover in the story itself. But
Right.
but for the moment, yeah, I would take one more swing at this where you highlight and bring the villain to the forefront, or maybe I don't mean villain necessarily in a moral sense, but as in the person that is trying to stop your main
Antagonist.
character. Yeah, the antagonist trying to stop your main character from accomplishing his goal. And then once we have that, so then you'll have a great balance of protagonist, antagonist, and central relationship, which I'm guessing the Master Priest is like, we're doing sort of a buddy team up with this guy.
Yeah.
Got it. Great.
Yeah. Definitely.
Okay, so I really clearly understand it. That sounds like a very fun sort of sword and sorcery type action adventure type story. But it also has the potential for you to. I mean, there's enough world there that you could include more political stakes as well on top of this. But I think this makes it a nice focus because it's so easy that anyone can understand. And like I compared it to Pinocchio, it's like that simple. You have the money boy who becomes a real boy, and then he's trying to get away and save himself, and that's just so simple that I think that having that at the core of it is important, because then any additional stakes that you add on top of that, we would understand as like through the eyes of your main character, or we would be able to see things like from his perspective, and as kind of an outsider, like this is an outsider that really works, as opposed to I think the focus of your other one, where the outsider seemed a little disconnected from what was going on, and it was like her goal didn't feel exactly pressing and urgent to her. Whereas this feels really directly urgent to your main character. So I think you're on the right track here.
Yeah, and this helped a lot because it actually connected one of the main villain that's kind of behind the scenes is actually more related to him than the main character of the previous story. So this I think this will work out with, the kind of broader arc of the story as well, not just the immediate stakes. So yeah,
Great.
That'd be cool.
Awesome. And do you think you want to do first person, or are you doing third?
Probably third limited, yeah.
Okay, cool. It is always cool to see a book from the POV of a non-human character. I wrote one about a skeleton, a reanimated skeleton, a couple months ago. Always fun to see how the different physical things they can do and the different way they feel sensations and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, one of the things I kind of want is to like have him almost have some preloaded thoughts that are kind of human, and so he's like trying to calm himself down. He's like, breathe. You are not able to breathe. What? Like?
Oh, he's like a robot almost.
He's like, yeah. He's like, I don't have a throat, but I need to calm down.
Yeah, error 404, no error detected.
Yeah.
Sounds cool.
So yeah,
I would take just one more rewrite on that. I think you're almost to a really compelling logline. Did you have any more questions on this one?
Not on the logline. I appreciate it.
No problem. And was there a title? Did I miss the title?
No, the previous one was it was more relevant to the previous main character, so I'll need to remake one.
Okay. Sounds good. All right, thanks for sharing. Hope that was helpful. Cool. And there's also some suggestions in the chat, it looks like. Feel free to take a look at those. Okay, so we are reopening the floor to questions, loglines, premises, story problems. What will it take to get your book ready for Nano next month? Vicky has a logline. All right, let's take a look. Hi, Vicky.
Hi.
All right, what have you got for us?
I'm gonna paste it because I made this while we were like discussing everything else, so it's only like the ideas that I have
Okay.
for the book idea. So okay. There goes. Yeah. Okay. After which in training loses the two people who meant the most to her, she will have to travel to this world's underworld, the deep, to retrieve them as she learns to use a forbidden spell book, I should put there, from the forbidden spells from an ancient book, trying to not lose herself in the process.
All right. Thanks for that. Let me read that back and make sure I grasp it. Okay. After a witch in training loses the two people who meant the most to her, she will have to travel to this world's underworld called the Deep to retrieve them, meaning retrieve her friends' souls?
Yeah.
Okay. As she learns to use the forbidden spell from an ancient book, trying not to lose herself in the process. What is the spell from the ancient book supposed to do?
It's not only one spell. I meant like she had to learn to read she had to like to learn the spells from the book itself.
Oh, okay. So she's learning a whole.
That's why I was missing an S there.
Okay. And why does she need to learn those spells?
In this case, it's because with the magic, she knows she's not gonna survive the underworld.
Oh, okay. So you're saying so this is a story about a woman that needs to go to the underworld to retrieve her friends' souls to bring them back to life, and along the way, she needs to learn to master magic in order to survive?
Yes.
Got it. Okay. I think I'm with you. And I think that it's just like a little cluttered in terms of words right now, and you might want to stick to present tense. So don't say she will have to, she must. Like, stay present and active as much as you can. So she must travel to the underworld to retrieve their souls. I think we need to clarify, to bring their spirits back so that we can bring them back to life. And when you say she loses the two people who meant the most to her, who are those people? Are they her family?
Close to it, they're not exactly her family.
Okay, are they her friends?
I still am not clear, but kind of like that's the closest I've gotten to the idea at this point.
Okay, so I just mean to specify, it would just be helpful to say something like after she loses her two best friends. It's just a little clearer than the two people who mean the most to her, which could be almost anything. So I would just probably say loses her two best friends. If that is indeed their relationship.
That's more similar. Yeah. It's only I'm still like building the idea of what they're going to be, but I want them to be like they were raised by. They are orphans and kind of like they were raised all together. Okay, so they're like the only family they have in that idea.
Okay, like a found family kind of thing. I get it. So in any case, she must travel to the underworld to retrieve their souls, and has to master magic along the way to survive. Something like that, right? Maybe a little bit out of order. This may not be the absolute best way of phrasing it. I think this just does cut down on the amount of information. You don't need to define like this world, underworld is called the deep. You can just say the underworld. Just try to simplify as much as you can. So she has to travel to get their souls back. And is she mastering a specific type of magic? Does it have a name? Like Is it necromancy or clairvoyance or telekinesis, or what is she actually trying to learn?
Here, well, they were kind of like when she was like outside, kind of like she had to choose at a certain point, but she never chose what type of magic she was gonna like learn
Okay, so what
when
are we
she was
watching her?
older.
What are we watching her
So
learn
in this one,
story?
she's kind of like learning shadow magic.
Shadow magic. Okay, great. And so she needs that to survive and to escape, I imagine, right?
Yes.
Got it. Okay, great. So yeah, I would start here. This may not be like a complete logline, but it is a simplified one. And I think that you could just maybe modify this a little, get a little bit more specific with this, and then you'll be in good shape. Any questions on this one?
Thanks. For now, I'm just like build in the building blocks, so not many questions yet.
Okay, no problem. Sounds like a good hook. Interesting story, so hope that helps for now. Thanks, Vicky.
Thanks.
Okay, let's reopen the floor to loglines, outlines, story questions, story problems. It's like a call-in show on radio. It's like those relationship problem shows. Just need more obnoxious sound effects. Anyone else? Feel free to share what you've got, to ask a question, donate to our NPR fundraiser. Luke says I should finish Among Dogs. Yeah, that was your earlier novel, right? What stage of that book are you on?
I'm almost to the halfway point.
Great. Okay, and premise scenes?
Yeah, premise scenes.
And
He
what
wants
would
to be
get
a bounty hunter.
What could get you unstuck? Is there something you're stuck on?
I don't know. I just need to put my butt in the chair and get back in the writing habit for that one. But I think I'm going to focus on Santa side for right now.
Yeah, it can be tough to come back to something after a long time. It's like very hard to re-engage if you lose the momentum.
I think it's got enough momentum in the story itself. I can just pick it right up. It's got a pretty easy plot. It's got solid scene cards.
Awesome.
There was that one chapter I hate that one chapter, but it's sort of a necessary evil. I think I'm going to rewrite that chapter like a third or fourth time.
Yeah, sometimes you just need to write the bad version of it in order to have something there and then be able to fix it later.
Yeah. And we need the trying the locks. Like, it's really important. So he has to have like a way out before he goes on his quest for revenge.
Right, yes. I often say this is my favorite part of story structure.
But I just don't like the chapter for some reason. Too much Jane Austen vibes.
Okay, too much Jane Austen. Understood. All right. Well, if you are mostly focusing on something else, or don't have a specific hurdle or obstacle to work on there, then we can open the floor. It looks like Vivian has a question about a cyberpunk gang war story. That sounds cool. Let's hear from Vivian. Hello.
Hello.
All right, so you've got a
Hey.
story premise you're working on. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, this kid and his brother are part of a gang, and they're warring over like territory and stuff. But at the beginning of the story, the kid finds like this robot that's like it's like an education robot made for like rich people, but I guess it was thrown out or whatever. And he's like repaired it enough that it's like serviceable. he's using it as like a bodyguard because it still has the self-defense chip that's inside of it to protect whoever its student is, because it's like I said, it's like made for rich people and shit. So he's gonna be using that to try and get one over on the other gang or whatever. And the whole time, I kind of wanted it to be like where the robot and the younger brother are kind of like the main characters. We're seeing things from each of their point of views, but the robot is like learning as it goes because it's like its chip that it used for educating people is corrupted, so it's in kind of like active learning mode where it's just picking up on shit around it, and it's kind of picking up on all the wrong things because of the environment it's in. Yeah, I don't know, like I don't have like a solid log line for it yet, but it is like it's just like a territory war going on that these two are kind of cut in the middle of.
That sounds
As
cool.
of yeah,
So
thanks.
let's ask some questions. So why? So it seems like if you said he was a kid, the main protagonist. How old is a kid?
I'm thinking like 14 or 15, like not like super young kid, but
Okay,
you know,
teenager.
not-
So
yeah.
is he trying to prove himself in the gang, and that's why he's trying to sort of tip the balance in the war? Is this all about him getting like a big promotion to a certain rank or something like that?
In my mind, it was like he just wants this this other gang to like leave them alone and shit. He wants like he's trying to find peace in some sense, you know, but the only way he knows how is through this like gang violence and shit.
Oh, okay. So there's a war going on that affects his life in negative ways, and he really wants to win the war because it's ruining his life.
Yeah, like he wants the fighting to stop, and like he's lost a bunch of friends already, and
Okay.
there's a lot going on.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I get it. Okay, so in that case, it's like a desperate situation, and they need to win the war, or else they're in big trouble.
Yeah.
Okay, so is it that the enemy is winning, perhaps, or has overwhelming odds against them?
Yeah, from what I've been thinking, yeah.
Okay, so I would start there. So that will really inform the stakes and motivation for your character, right? It's like they're desperate for a way to win this war that they are losing. They're in desperate need of some sort of advantage, and then when the kid manages to find this robot, then that gives them that sort of, it's like RoboCop. He gets or a Terminator 2, right? He gets a robot on his side that he can wield against his enemies, and that's like I guess would be the tipping points in this battle. And then I would ask antagonists. Do you have an idea for a villain of some kind?
I was thinking of like having the robot become kind of like a back door into the other gang in some way. Like maybe the other gang doesn't know about the robot or whatever, you know? So like he runs in with that other gang and like uses that relationship to backdoor them and like attack them from the inside. You know what I mean? But
Okay.
it's also a situation of like the robot gets to know the other people in the other gang, and it doesn't want any of this fighting by the end, you know?
So wait, are you saying like it can blend in with humans?
No, it was like, so the robot is kind of like it's kind of like a kid at this point mentally, because its chip that held all the information and stuff is corrupted.
Mm-hmm.
It's in this like active learning mode, so it's just like picking up on everything around it, and it doesn't really I don't know, it's not all super concrete in my brain yet. I just have a
That's
lot of
okay.
like concepts and stuff that I'm trying to work out.
Yeah, this is a fine time to just speak out loud, just see what you land on. So if you are in this world of, this is almost like a RoboCop type of reality, it sounds like, then these stories, especially if they're more action focused, and it sounds like it is. Let me just ask: is this is like an action sci-fi type story? Is that right?
I guess there would be major action sequences, but a lot of it, I want it to be like when the action happens, it's really, I guess, like, I guess I want people to really fear the guns when they come out in this story.
Okay.
You know.
So in action-focused stories like this, usually it's very helpful if you have an interesting and developed villain. So I would think of, is it the leader of the other gang? Is it another member of your main character's same gang who maybe gets jealous of the robot and wants it for himself, or something like that? I would ask, who do you think that kind of opposing character could be that has their own rational worldview and reason for doing what they're doing, and whether, even if they're trying to wipe out the main character's family and all his gang members or things like this, then they could still be an interesting and developed character that carries some weight in the story. So, any ideas there?
No, I was thinking like kind of like a I don't know. I was thinking like he would blend in with the humans, the robot. Like he would look like a human being, and that's how he would kind of backdoor them. I'm not really sure how I want him to look at this point. I think it would be kind of weird, like a a robot running around that just looks like a normal person.
Well,
but
there's lots of series that do that, though. Blade Runner, Terminator, like we do that all the time.
yeah, I guess that could make sense.
Battlestar Galactica is all about this. Anyway, I would start with the villain. I would think of who do you want to focus, like who is the opposition here? And that can be a really entertaining character. Think, Michael Ironside in RoboCop, or think like if this is like a Nicolas Cage type of role for this character, or something like this. Like the villain does a lot for setting the tone of your world and increasing like that level of pressure and danger and urgency. So important to have in an action-focused story.
Yeah.
And then that will help you also determine what your set pieces will look like, right? If your villain is the head of the other crime gang, then you might be doing more sort of crime action type set pieces like street races and shootouts in warehouses and alleyways and stuff like this. Whereas if your villain is more of like, I don't know, the chief of police or something like that, then the action's going to look a little different and the stakes will be different.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would start there. I like the basic hook of kid in gang repurposes robot in order to tip the balance in a cyberpunk gang war. That sounds cool. You just need to get more specific about the objectives and the concrete, tangible goalpost here. Could it be, I need to kill the enemy gang leader? Could it be, we need to take their headquarters over? Could it be, we need to blow up their generator for their super weapon? Or maybe they have like a recruiting center or something like that. Get a little bit more concrete and tangible with the opposition, and then you can therefore transition from there to solidifying the goals.
All right. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I hope that helps for now. Did you have any more questions on this one?
Not really, but I'm like formulating ideas now, and I feel like structurally could be sort of like a ladder to the boss type situation where they have to go through like taking over different territories by doing different robberies or street races, or like you said, just like different gang activity until they finally get up.
Like GTA or like a video game almost.
Yeah.
You could do that. And I wanted to ask, have you seen the movie Chappie?
Oh, no. I've seen a lot of scenes from it, but I have not seen the movie.
It would probably be a good comp. I think I'm the only one in the world that liked it. Somehow it has terrible reviews, but I actually thought it was kind of great. But you've got like a robot that is used by criminals to do crime stuff, but his personality isn't exactly like the type to do that, so he's sort of a fish out of water. He's a great character. I actually think you should watch it. It's a good comp for you.
All right, thanks.
And Short Circuit, of course, if you haven't seen Short Circuit.
I have not. I'll look into that.
You got to catch up on your childlike robot mythology. That's
Yeah.
I think there's 2 of them, maybe even 3. Somebody can confirm. But yeah, that was a really fun one. I'm sure it's very dated now, but in that great kind of like, I'm an Atari peripheral that is also a robot kind of world. It works very well. Okay, thank you, Vivian. I hope that's helpful for now and gives you just some places to start in terms of brainstorming.
Yeah, thanks.
No problem. Luke says, oh, of course, Luke has seen Short Circuit. Someone has. Okay, we got about 10 minutes left. So the floor is completely open. Whatever you guys want to ask about or work on, brainstorm for your novel projects. We could also do some fun picture prompts if no one else wants to, because there were a couple that we didn't get to last time. There's something about the bee one that's very compelling to me. Something about the phrasing is so delightful. Everyone's just coming up with Candyman sequels. Okay, so feel free to raise a hand and speak up about your project, or pitch us a story about the bees in the wall. Maybe the story is called The Bee's Knees. Okay, floor is open. Anybody else want to speak up? Do a picture prompts? We also have the 38-pound cat named Crumbs, who tried his best to escape from Fat Camp, but couldn't get through the shoe rack. Luke says, I have a man made of bees and among dogs. Yeah, that guy, maybe that guy was just living in the wall. Okay, Luke, do a picture
It could be a
prompts.
horror movie.
You want to do a prompt?
You mean pitch a story, like a novel based on this?
It doesn't have to be a novel, just a story, but yeah, could be a movie or show. But yeah, you want to pick one? We have the ones available that have not yet been chosen are Florida man kidnaps scientist to make his dog immortal. We have the 38-pound cat named Crumbs, and then we have the bees.
I mean, the bees, like it's literally just cobweb. It's like the structure of cobweb, but you find out that it's bees, like the psychic bees, I guess.
Psychic bees. Okay, so they're talking to the kid?
Yeah, they whisper to him and they try to get him to, I don't know, what do bees need?
What do bees need?
Pollen.
Pollen, I guess, yeah.
Uh,
They're asking him to bring them deliveries of pollen so they can continue to expand their hive.
yeah, it could be he's like stealing flowers from a funeral home or something, and
Oh, that's kind of fun. Actually, I think I
don't
think
know.
it's the nectar that they need. I think the pollen is actually just incidental, like as they touch down the flower. Somebody should confirm that. I'm not 100% sure.
well, it'd be
But-
more fun if he brought them victims or something to feed on.
Right. Well, do they need if they were flesh-eating bees, it could work. There are. Yeah, have you ever seen there have been if bees make their honey using other substances, then they can turn bizarre other colors like deep red or blue even. I think I saw once there was a beehive that was made outside of a Skittles factory that was like multicolored blue and purple.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't have much of a pitch beyond
That's
just
okay.
cobweb, but with bees.
Cobweb, but with bees. We'll call it beehive. We'll call it wasp nests. These are terrible titles. We are not in our top form today.
Nah. The bee's knees.
The bee's knees.
Pretty
Yeah,
bad.
let's go with that title. Okay.
Works raises
looks
hand.
like, yeah, Ryan, go ahead. Do you want to talk about your story, or do you want to do a picture prompt?
Hey, I'm just thinking if we wanted to do one more story time, I can do that. I had a question because I kind of have the new tagline.
Sure.
I just subbed out a couple parts of it to include the relentless auditor as part of it.
Okay.
Kind of, I'm picturing kind of a Javert figure. But where do you go from here? Because like with my previous one, I've kind of had it like percolating in the back of my mind for a while. So I don't really remember like the best strategy to go from that to like, because I kind of just have the inciting incident here.
Okay, well, I will give you a boost because we've got 10 minutes left, and I think this will be the last one for today. So I will show you how to go from logline to early stage of your outline. Okay, so let's start with this.
Oh, I didn't spell millennia right this time either. I need to. Is there a way to get a spell check on Scrivener? Does anybody know?
I'm not sure. I would assume there is. I've never tried it myself. So. Okay, after a golem reawakens, so probably don't do two afters in the sentence.
Oh, yeah, good point.
So after a golem reawakens after a millennia of stasis within a treasury vault, he must escape from a relentless auditor with the help of a masked priest, becoming the catalyst for a religious revolution. Nice. This has almost everything except for the fact that he himself is the valuable thing. So I think if there's some way that you can just mention, like after, a golem who is made of this highly valuable mineral or whatever it is. I'm not sure if you call it a mineral, but whatever the substance is, if you can just work that in, then you'll have everything there. But I get the relentless auditor is an agent of the treasury, right?
Mm-hmm.
Got it. Okay, and he's essentially trying to kidnap the golem and bring him back.
Right. He initially is trying to find the thief who stole one of his statues. Because the idea that these guys reawaken is kind of a new thing.
Have you read First Law by Joe Abercrombie?
No, it's on my list.
Okay, there's a great sort of inquisitor type character in those books that this kind of reminds me of.
Okay, I'll look into it.
You'll probably if you like epic fantasy, I think you'll probably like it. Okay, let's do the basics of the structure, and I'm gonna go kind of quick through this just because we're in our last 10 minutes. But let's go from logline to outline. So to begin with, let's write out the essentials of 3-act structure. We have intro. So here's our major beats.
Could you copy those into the chat for me?
Oh, sure. And so the nice thing with these is that you can be very mathematical about the sort of like points where all these things will happen, and you don't have to stick exactly to this, but these are just sort of like rough proportions. So I'll just throw some numbers on here, and you can imagine these are the percentage through the book. So we'll start with 1 to 10%. Whoops. Your catalyst happens at about that 10% mark. Trying the locks, that's like refusal of the call in Hero's Journey. That's going to take us from about 10 to 25. Break into 2 on 25%. Our premise scenes are going to take you from 25 to 50. Midpoint right at 50. Escalation from 50 to 75. All is lost on 75. Pit of Despair, 75 to 85. Break into 3 on 85. Finale from 85 to 95. And then epilogue 95 to 100. Okay, and you have a couple of the key elements already here. So you have your catalyst. After a golem reawakens after a millennia of stasis within a treasury vault, we're going to copy that and paste that down into catalyst. Although in your case, it sounds a little bit like he wakes up at the very start of the story, and it might be more like he escapes the vault as the catalyst. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, I think that sounds right.
Okay.
I need to figure out the mechanics of it, but yeah.
You know what? This weirdly reminds me of the Gingerbread Man. Isn't this kind of like? Isn't this kind of like that?
Oh man, I gotta give him a catchphrase.
Yeah, exactly. He needs a little rhyme. But anyway, so let's put that at the beginning, and then we'll say he leaves the vault at the catalyst.
Okay.
So you could even have him, if he's maybe even in the vault for the first chapter or two trying to find a way out, maybe you could even sort of introduce some other POVs if you have them. during that time, but then he needs to sort of like work up to this escape. Or the earlier he escapes, you'll have to find maybe some other threshold for him to cross, right? So maybe it's like he escapes the vault early on, but maybe the catalyst is him taking that first step out of the castle or something along those lines. But for now, I'm just making choices. You don't have to stick with these choices. This is just to show you how to kind of go from logline to outline.
Yeah.
So he must escape from a relentless auditor. We're going to put that under premise scenes. With the help of a masked priest, that tells us that is sort of your B story. So we're going to meet that guy in your trying to lock section. So we'll meet the priest somewhere within the first act, and then I think you'll have, often with a buddy team up, it's the question is like, can I trust this person that I'm with? Are they actually going to work with me or help me? We've seen like Princess Bride and these things like this where like some of these great buddy team ups start with them fighting or on very negative terms with each other. And then you've got, with the help of a masked priest, becoming the catalyst for a religious revolution. So we're going to put that down towards the all is lost. So not to say that the revolution means that all is lost, but that is kind of the thing that you're working up to, like the culmination of the stakes so far. Meaning that at the all is lost moment might be, it could be like the revolution seems as if it's on the verge of falling apart or something like that. But in any case, you'll be drawing this into the center spotlight at the all is lost moment. And then, let's see, what else? You must escape relentless auditor with the help of the masked priest. Okay, so you've got a couple major things on the board already. So your goal will be to kind of connect the dots between all of these. You've got your intro, so this is where, and I've done lots of other classes that you can look up, by the way, if you want just more info on just the basics of story structure. And I'm not sure how familiar you are with this already, but in any case, your intro section is where your character's in some sort of stasis. In your case, he literally begins the story in some kind of stasis. And you're going to have to sort of get him out of that kind of normal world. And in his case, because he starts the story as kind of a prisoner, you might want to sort of make the audience, feel like that prisoner as well. If he leaves the story too early, or if he leaves that sort of stasis or normal thing too early, then you might just risk kind of throwing the audience out into the middle of the ocean and they have no idea what's going on because your character has no idea what's going on. So I might think it would be useful for him to stay in the vault for just a little bit at the start. And maybe even if there's some other treasures or things he can talk to in there, then he could get his bearings and kind of understand, like, I'm not sure how much you want him to even know about the world at all. Like, is he like a newborn?
Yeah, I was thinking of giving him kind of, when you mentioned Pinocchio, I was kind of thinking of a Jiminy Cricket.
Like
I don't know,
like a sidekick of some kind?
Yeah, like an internal voice kind of. He's got a Jarvis.
That could be cool. Yeah, I mean,
But-
you could make all the rules you want. You could say he's got a spirit inside him that he can talk to, or
Yeah,
maybe he's got like a mechanical organ or something like that that can talk.
yeah. That could be interesting, especially if it's like all of the knowledge that it has is for like a couple thousand years ago. So now everything is fantasy and not it's not super relevant.
Right. Okay, that could be cool. So yeah, we'll probably want to meet that character in the first 10% or so. That'll be a fun focus for him to, like, something for him to actually do in the vault. I assume people aren't coming in and out all the time, are they?
No, it's pretty much locked down. But that auditor is gonna be the one that kind of explores it and maybe finds if he's made somehow some new pathway out of the vault. Now suddenly the vault is, has been breached. It appears.
Right. And so, since your character's main goal is sort of just to escape and live on his own, it seems like he wants to kind of just be independent and live in a normal life. Is that right? I don't know what kind of normal life a golem could live, but
I think he's trying to figure out what type of life he wants. He obviously wants a purpose, but the world that he's kind of built for doesn't exist anymore. So he wants to find a place.
Okay, good. So that's going to inform your break into 3. So that the break into 3 moment is the one that is going to follow the pit of despair. So after the worst thing seems like has happened, maybe this revolution has gotten out of hand or something like this, or it seems like your main character is captured. That always makes a good all is lost kind of moment. Then it seems like succeeding is now impossible. Maybe he's even back in the vault in your pit of despair. Maybe he's, his worst fear is realized. He's back to being a hunk of gold in the vault. And then your break into 3 is where he's going to sort of find that purpose.
I'm thinking now maybe the people that he's met, maybe there's some actor who wants to like reawaken all of the golem or something like that, but wants to, make an army out of them or something. He has to stop that from happening.
That could be cool. Yeah, maybe if we imagine that a kind of a golem uprising could be sort of fun as well. So if during the Pit of Despair, all the golems get reanimated by the villain in order to be used as his personal robot, clone slave army, then maybe the finale is your main character takes control of that group and leads them in a battle. That could be kind of fun.
Yeah, and it could be kind of a if the priest is kind of the mentor character who's kind of like, because I could have that pilgrim guide idea, like he could kind of hire him as a guide effectively, but then at the end of the story, the golem has to guide the rest of the golems out into the world. But hopefully, probably not all of them, because it might devastate the entire economy or island nation.
Well, maybe they need a different standard than sentient beings.
True. Yeah, sentient beings kind of there's some. Oh, man.
Some ethical concerns there. But I guess if most people don't know that they are indeed sentient, then maybe it just seems like not that big a deal to most of the world.
Yeah. And that's how we got off the gold standard. It's the invention of fiat currency. What a glorious ending.
Great. Okay. So this is all about economic reform, but in the most visual, fun kind of way.
Oh, that's funny.
Okay. So
this feels a lot more solid.
A good skeleton, I think, especially if you're kind of leading towards this golem uprising, which I think is a cool direction for the story to take. You don't have to go that route, of course, but that just gives you a structure.
Yeah, it could be cool.
And then you might imagine that if the golems kind of become the head of this revolution, like maybe even your hero, your main character becomes almost this messiah to his own species.
Yeah, definitely. I've watched a lot of Dune recently, so and read, but that was a while ago.
Cool. Yeah, it almost reminds me of iRobot.
That too.
I wish I could say I haven't read the original. I am referring to the terrible Will Smith movie, but the plot does feature this sort of robotic messiah character who leads his people to revolution and freedom. Anyway, I'll paste this in the chat, and you can obviously take whatever you want from this. Maybe this is not the exact direction you want to go, but having the strong logline, I hope just to demonstrate, you can start to figure out where those things will be just on the plot board. Once you have all the story beats laid out, then you can easily see, okay, when inciting incident, an adjective protagonist must conflict before stakes. And then you can start pasting those in the appropriate sections and figuring out, okay, well, this is where those stakes would culminate. This is where the character would have to make the choice to move into that sequence. Or this is where the character would have to dig down deep and become ultimately like the version of themselves that they become for the finale. Okay, we are a little over time, but let me just ask, did you have any questions about this or any last things you wanted to say or ask about here?
No, this has been super helpful. Thank you.
No problem. Hope to see more from this. Thanks for joining us today. And thank you to everybody else, of course. We are wrapping up for now. For members, we have lab today 4 to 6. And tomorrow, as I mentioned, we are doing TV writing from 11 to 1. I'm just being blinded by the brightness of my screen. That's fine. So we will see you guys soon for your next script camp class or event. Hope this was useful for you, and we have 2 more of these NaNoWriMo prep type workshops in October as we're working up to starting our novel boot camp in November. And that is going to be a 90-day program that takes you all the way from idea to finished draft of your book, week by week, with classes, review, workshops, lots more activities and things like this. So we hope to see you around WordCamp or on Script Camp, which is our main server, where we are doing still feature writing Fridays from 6 to 8, TV writing Sundays 11 to 1, and we have plenty more events, workshops, classes, and things like this, which you can find all on the events tab on our Discord page. Whoops. So keep working on your premise. Expand that into a logline when you're ready. When you're ready to move on to the next step from there, try to expand into 3 sentences for your beginning, middle, and end. That's going to be like your first, second, and third act. And then from there, you can expand into either a few paragraph summary, or you can start filling in your story beats, which are going to be intro, catalyst, find the locks, break into 2, premise scenes, midpoint, escalation, all is lost, pit of despair, break into 3, finale, epilogue. Did I miss one? I think that was it. Anyway, keep working on your book. We'll see more from you next week, and we look forward to seeing you for any other Script Camp or WordCamp events this weekend. Thanks, guys. We'll see you back here soon.
Thank you.